I'm over here slipping and tripping, ready to get going. Good morning. Yesterday was Palm Sunday. Today we're reading Matthew 26, 1 through 25. The plot to kill Jesus. The plot to kill Jesus. When Jesus had finished saying these things, he said to his disciples, "As you know, the Passover celebration begins in 2 days, and I, the Son of Man, will be betrayed and crucified." At that same time, the leading priests and other leaders were meeting at the residence of Caiaphas, the high priest, to discuss how to capture Jesus secretly and put him to death. But not during the Passover, they agreed, or there would be a riot. Jesus anointed at Bethany. Meanwhile, Jesus was in Bethany at the home of Simon, a man who had leprosy. During supper, a woman came in with a beautiful jar of expensive perfume. And poured it over his head. The disciples were indignant when they saw this. "What a waste of money," they said. "She could have sold it for a fortune and given the money to the poor." But Jesus replied, "Why berate her for doing such a good thing to me? You always have the poor among you, but I will not be here with you much longer. She has poured this perfume on me to prepare my body for burial. I assure you, and the good news is preached throughout the world, this woman's deed will be talked about in her memory." Judas agrees to betray Jesus. Then Judas Iscariot, one of the 12 disciples, went to the leading priest and asked, "How much will you pay me to betray Jesus to you?" And they gave him 30 pieces of silver. From that time on, Judas began looking for the right time and place to betray Jesus. The Last Supper. On the first day of the festival of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus and asked, "Where do you want us to prepare the Passover supper?" "As you go into the city," he told them, "you will see a certain man. Tell him, the teacher says, my time has come, and I will eat the Passover meal with my disciples at your house." So the disciples did as Jesus told them and prepared the Passover supper there. When it was evening, Jesus sat down at the table with the 12 disciples. While they were eating, he said, "The truth is, one of you will betray me." Greatly distressed, one by one, they began to ask, "I am not the one, am I, Lord?" He replied, "One of you who is eating with me now will betray me. For I, the Son of Man, must die, as the scriptures declared long ago. But how terrible it will be for my betrayer. Far better for him if he had never been born." Judas, the one who will betray him, also asked, "Teacher, I'm not the one, am I?" And Jesus told him, "You have said it yourself." Matthew 26, 1 through 25. Numbers 35 and 36. Towns for the Levites. While Israel was camped beside the Jordan on the plains of Moab, across from Jericho, the Lord said to Moses, "Instruct the people of Israel to give the Levites from their property certain towns to live in, along the surrounding pasture lands. These towns will be their homes, and the surrounding lands will provide pasture for their cattle, flock, and other livestock. The pasture land assigned to the Levites around these towns will extend 1,500 feet from the town walls in every direction. Measure off 3,000 feet outside the town walls in every direction, east, south, west, and north, with the town at the center. This area will serve as the larger pasture land for the towns. You must give the Levites 6 cities of refuge where a person who has accidentally killed someone can flee for safety. In addition, give them 42 other towns. In all 48 towns with the surrounding pasture lands will be given to the Levites. These towns will come from the property of the people of Israel. The larger tribes will give more towns to the Levites, while the smaller tribes will give fewer. Each tribe will give in proportion to its inheritance. Cities of refuge. And the Lord said to Moses, "Say this to the people of Israel. When you cross the Jordan into the land of Canaan, designate cities of refuge for the people to flee if they have killed someone accidentally. These cities will be places of protection from the dead person's relatives who want to avenge the death. The slayer must not be killed before being tried by the community. Designate 6 cities for refuge for yourself, 3 on the east side of the Jordan, 3 on the west in the land of Canaan. These cities are for protection of the Israelites, residents, foreigners, and traveling merchants. Anyone who accidentally kills someone may flee there for safety. But if someone strikes another person with a piece of iron, it must be presumed to be murder, or the murderer must be executed, Or if someone strikes and kills another person with a large stone, it is murder, and the murderer must be executed. The same is true if someone strikes and kills a person with a wooden weapon. It must be presumed to be murder, and the murderer must be executed. The victim's nearest relative is responsible for putting the murderer to death. When they meet, the avenger must execute the murderer. So if in premeditated hostility someone pushes another person or throws a dangerous object and the person dies, it is murder. Or if someone angrily hits a person with a fist and the person dies, it is murder. In such cases, the victim's nearest relative must execute the murderer when they meet. But suppose someone pushes another person without premeditated hostility, or throws something and unintentionally hits another person, or accidentally drops a stone on someone, though they are not enemies and the person dies. If this should happen, the assembly must follow these regulations in making a judgment between the slayer and the avenger, the victim's nearest relative. They must protect the slayer from the avenger, and they must send the slayer back to live in a city of refuge until the death of the high priest. But if the slayer leaves the city of refuge and the victim's nearest relative finds him outside the city and kills him, it will not be considered murder. The slayer should have stayed inside the city of refuge until the death of the high priest. But after the death of the high priest, the slayer may return to his own property. These are the permanent laws for you to observe from generation to generation, wherever you may live. All murderers must be executed, but only if there is more than one witness. No one may be put to death on the testimony of only one witness. Also, you must never accept the ransom payment for the life of someone judged guilty of murder and subject to execution. Murderers must always be put to death, and never accept a ransom payment for someone who has fled to a city of refuge, allowing the slayer to return to his property before the death of the high priest. This will ensure that the land where you live will not be polluted, for murderers pollute the land, and no atonement can be made for murder except by the execution of the murderer. You must not defile the land where you are going to live. For I live there myself. I am the Lord, who lives among the people of Israel. Women who inherit property. Then the heads of the clans of Gilead, descendants of Machir, son of Manasseh, son of Joseph, came to Moses and the family leaders of Israel with a petition. They said, "Sir, the Lord instructed you to divide the land by sacred lots among the people of Israel. You were told by the Lord to give the inheritance to our brother Zelophehad to his daughters. But if any of them marries a man from another tribe, their inheritance of land will go with them to the tribe in which they marry. In this way, the total area of our tribal land will be reduced. Then when the year of Jubilee comes, their inheritance of land will be added to that new tribe, causing it to be lost forever to our ancestral tribe. So Moses gave the Israelites this command from the Lord. The men of the tribe of Joseph are right. This is what the Lord commands concerning the daughters of Zelophehad. Let them marry anyone they like, as long as it's within their own ancestral tribe. None of the inherited land may pass from tribe to tribe, for the inheritance of every tribe must remain fixed as it was first allotted. The daughters throughout the tribe of Israel who are in the line to inherit property must marry within their tribe, so that the Israelites will keep their ancestral property. No inheritance may pass from one tribe to another. Each tribe of Israel must hold on to its allotted inheritance of land. The daughters of Zelophehad did as the Lord commanded Moses. Mahlah, Tisra, Hoglah, Michlah, and Noah all married cousins on their father's side. They married into the clan of Manasseh, son of Joseph. Thus their inheritance of land remained within the ancestral tribe. These are the commands and regulations that the Lord gave to the people of Israel through Moses, while they were camped on the plains of Moab beside the Jordan River. That was the end of Numbers, chapters 35 and 36. And finishing today with Job 3. Job 3. The book of Job. Job's first speech. At last, Job spoke, and he cursed the day of his birth. He said, "Cursed be the day of my birth, and not cursed be the night when I was conceived. Let that day be turned to darkness. Let it be lost, even to God on high. And let it be shrouded in darkness. Yes, let the darkness and utter gloom claim it for its own. Let a black cloud overshadow it, and let the darkness terrify it. Let that night be blotted off the calendar, and never again to be counted among the days of the year. Never again to appear among the months. Let that night be barren. Let it have no joy. Let those who are expert at cursing, those who are ready to rouse the sea monster, curse that day. Let its morning star remain dark. Let it hope for light, but in vain. May it never see the morning. Curse it for its failure to shut my mother's womb, for letting me born to all this trouble. Why didn't I die at birth as I came from the womb? Why did my mother let me live? Why did she nurse me at her breast? For if I had died at birth, I would be at peace now, asleep and at rest. I would rest with the world kings and prime ministers famous for their great construction projects. I would rest with the wealthy princes whose palaces were filled with gold and silver. Why was I not buried like a stillborn child, like a baby who's never lives to see the light? For in death the wicked cease from troubling, and the weary are at rest. Even prisoners are at ease in death, with no guards to curse them. Rich and poor are there alike, and the slave is free from his master. Oh, why should light be given to the weary and life to those in misery? They long for death, and it won't come. They search for death more eagerly than hidden treasure. It is a blessed relief when they finally die, when they find the grave. Why is life given to those with no future? those destined by God to live in distress. I cannot eat for sighting. My groans pour out like water. What I fear has happened to me. What I dread has come to be. I have no peace, no quietness. I have no rest. Instead, only trouble comes. Job chapter 3. Stay blessed to you all. Till tomorrow.